Hi there YouTube, Mark Verheer here with the third installment in this emulation saga. Why do we emulate? I emulate out of preservation purposes. I emulate out of ease of use. I emulate out of fascination. To save wear and tear on the original systems, and I get a lot of messages. Yes, we're still organizing our my in-laws' 50th wedding. It will go off every once in a while. You know, it can't be helped. I need to keep an eye on that. Oh well. Why do we emulate? Well, not to pirate, not to copy games, at least not I, because I have a whole room filled with games and I do not need to add more games that I don't own, but I want them easily available and to be able to play them in a very high fidelity, easy accessible. Of course I do prefer playing on the real thing, but yeah, nothing wrong with emulation. Now, when you do emulate, I want a very easy to use system. Just, you know, like a console, you just turn it on, you grab the controller, and that's all you do. So that's why, for the longest time, people have been emulating on with homebrew on various consoles. And basically, I think almost every console out there had some form of homebrew or emulation going on, going back to the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, the Dreamcast, the Game Boy Advance, DS, 3DS to some extent, and the disc-based systems. Emulation is something that makes accessible games that otherwise wouldn't be accessible anymore, because you need the hardware, because all the gaming systems use proprietary hardware, which is good to prevent people from copying, but it's also bad because it removes accessibility from it. Now, a lot of companies, especially Microsoft, is actually improving the accessibility of the old Xbox One games, the Xbox original games, because they are planning to port those or make them accessible, at least some of them I guess, on the new Xbox One console, which is a good thing, free of cost. For the most part, a lot of these gaming companies, especially Nintendo and Sony, they want you to pay again and again and again to play the same games, which I think is utter bollocks, but can't be helped. Now, people have been asking me, why don't you just put RetroArch on it? Why don't you just, you know, run emulators on Windows or Linux? Well, you can. I've shown you in the second video, in the previous video, that you can emulate on Linux. You can even install Retropie on Linux, and it works. But because of this, on a small end, low end system, the GUI and a lot of the drivers and stuff and processors, they can create lag, you know, a system being less than optimal responsive to the inputs of the user. If you are running a more high-end system with more memory, a better graphics card, probably this won't be such an issue. The thing is that still the software is only accessible when you use a mouse or a keyboard, you know, and then in the second phase you actually grab the controller and you play the game. It's fine, you know. I mean, if you want to tinker, if you wanna configure, you know, you can use that to your heart's content. But the purpose of these videos, especially Laka and Linux, is actually to be able to just have a turn on and play console experience. And Laka, the Linux distribution that I showed you in the first video, actually is called the do-it-yourself console. Basically turning a low-end system into a console. You just need a compatible controller and you control everything from the controller. So that's a good thing. at least from a usability standpoint. Of course, it does introduce negatives because it's a closed system. You can't easily add to Laka, at least not yet. Linux is more highly configurable, but on my small form factor desktop PCs, not really intended for gaming, it's a bit taxing the systems a bit too much. Now, there is another system, another operating system that has been used for that has been used for playing a retro game and emulation quite a bit, and it's even implemented in various Linux handhelds. I made a whole playlist of these, the JXD devices, the JPD devices, the Shield, NVIDIA Shield, a lot of Linux or Android based handhelds that provide a whole plethora of emulation which works great with little lag. And I thought, perhaps using Android I can have the best of both worlds, the versatility to be able to run more emulators, more software outside of the RetroArch environment, which is Laka, but at the same time preserve that zero lag operation that is found on these Android handhelds. So the big question in this episode is actually whether or not Android, if you install it on a PC natively with the x86 builds, whether or not that actually will be a solid gaming experience. And perhaps it is. Perhaps it's better than Linux on this small form factor PC, thinking about accessibility. Of course, the whole Linux interface, if you hook up one of these, you actually get to select and start certain icons on the screen with a controller. So to some extent, if you configure it well, you could actually get away with mostly using this and only very sparingly the keyboard and mouse. So that might actually be a better solution for people who want more versatility. But let's go check out how it actually installs on the system that I'm actually running Linux on, because I decided I would wipe the hard drive and of the Linux install and just try Android on it. Not to worry, I've got a ton of hardware backups on 3.5-inch discs, so not to worry. So yeah, let's check out how the install went and how actually running the emulation goes and how it compares to Laka and bare bones Linux. Make myself scarce again. Whoops. Very small. Hello. Okay, I have to type in my my password. Okay, let's go to Android. Android x86. Android, porting Android to x86. And there's a release candidate of 7, but there's a release of 3, and that's the stable release. And I'm just not going to go for the release candidate because how LRR3 is supported. Let's go for the stable release. And I think I'm going to go for the 64-bit ISO because the system is capable of 64 bits. Where do I download it? Pre-built images, okay. So it's the 6R3 64-bit. Yeah, I'm just downloading the ISO file. And it's going to take a small bit. Yeah, I'm going to grab myself a writable DVD, I believe. And I'll put it in the drive. The drive is capable of operating vertically, and once it has loaded, I'm going to just burn it. I'm just going to burn it to the whoops. Cancel. That's neat. But I just wanted to burn. I just want to burn it to the image. Oh, and it's actually, it is a CD image. Yeah. Oh well. I'm going to burn it to the drive, to the disk, and then just boot from it and install Android and see how that runs on this system. It's 64-bit Android, so it should be able to make use of the full 8 gigabytes that I've in here. I think it was 8, wasn't it? It does take away a bit. 7.7, yeah, it's 8 because it takes away a couple of megabytes. So yeah, this has downloaded. So CD recording software. CD XF burn. Oh, there's a couple of burners. ISOMasters XF burn. Let me see. What will that do? Burn image. Burn image. Burn ISO file. Yeah. Burn image. Image to burn. No, not Gandalf's Windows PE. Downloads. Android R3. Open. Max Auto. Eject. Burn freeze. Stream recording. Burn image. It does seem to work. Actually, this is the second time I've burned an image, and of course it's a CD image, but yeah, I think it'll work on a DVD. It's just a waste of resources, but I don't think I have a CD recordable. It's probably writing a lead in right now. Yeah, burning optical media. That's also something of a I used to do that a ton, you know, burning music compilation discs and stuff, and now it's really something that you don't do a lot. A lot of systems even don't come with an optical drive, so yeah, my MacBook actually comes with an optical drive. It's one of the last Power Macs, MacBook Pros that come with an optical drive. I believe it's a 2016 or 2015 model. It even sports a compact, what is it, an SD card reader. I'm hoping that once I've installed Android on this, and I may actually install Android this version and perhaps even do Nougat and see how it'll function. I also have a Bluetooth connector hooked up, and if my Logitech wireless doesn't want to be supported, I actually have gotten another. Let me drag myself larger again. Whoops! I actually have another. It's a SteelSeries Stratus XL. It runs on Windows and Android. I can actually have that hooked up, and perhaps quite a few more games will actually work with it, as the Logitech controllers. I mean, they work great, but they are more of a generic controller. Okay, so that actually ejected. Close, and I'll. Okay, well, I'm just gonna put this back and reboot the system. I'm not sure whether or not I'll be able to. Let me just drag myself smaller again. Whether or not I'll be able to. Whoops. Reboot. Whoa, 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 whoa. Shut down and then restart. And then I have to check out the screen. It probably will not be able to see everything that's going on. Lenovo. Will it just continue to boot? Yeah, it's going to boot again. So I need to press F9 or something. No. F12. I need to select a boot. So boot from the DVD and then a legacy, I guess. ISO Linux run alive, and oh, this actually works. I might actually be able to record the installation of Android. That will be cool. So install Android x86 to hard drive. So it'll just do its thing, detecting Android x86. It's found it on the optical drive. Now I do need to erase all these partitions because they're Linux partitions. So I'm just gonna. Oh bloody hell! No. Whoops. Let's get rid of that. The swap, delete. So all is there. Write that. Just delete it all. So it's just a blank DVD or a blank CD. And it does take its fair share of time. Oh well. I think this is just a hanging system, it's just weird. Let's boot again from the F12. And then do the legacy boot. And install Android x86 to hard disk. Yeah, we call it hard disk in the Netherlands as well. It seems to be called hard drive in other parts of the world. Right, detecting Android. Create modify partitions, hard drive. Sure, why not? None. Damage attempt to convert. Okay. Free space, new, first sector, default, size and sector, default. Nope, this is something I don't want to use. Let me reboot again. I just want something that is familiar. GP, I think that is something for, you know, I'm no expert at all. But that's something that probably will not work with the BIOS of this system. I need just to have something familiar, a familiar partition. Create modify partition, hard drive, no, and then just use, yeah, this is something new, primary. This seems something, and it should be bootable. This is something that is familiar, and I'm right. Yes. Writing partition table to disk. Okay, and then quit. And then just select to install it on an X4. Format it. Yeah, I do need to format it. X4. Formatted partition. Yes. Oh, it's actually quite cool that I'm able to record this. Just, you know, checking out how Linux works. It didn't work that well on this system. Laka runs great on the Dell, and I'm very curious how Android would stack up It was either a choice of putting Android on it or Laka on it. And I do think that it's actually more prudent to use an SSD with Android, because Android really works best with Android actually works best with SSD storage, because that's actually a lot faster than the old mechanical drives. So if this actually sort of works, I do have a 250 gigabyte serial ATA Samsung drive. So if it really works, and if it's really compatible, and I don't need all the terabytes of room, can you imagine having an Android device with a terabyte of storage space? But yeah, I mean, if it makes it a lot snappier, then I might. But then again, having all the storage space, and if the emulators work well on it, this could actually be also a very nice system to use Android on. Now, formatting the partition really takes it a long time. I'm really not sure if it actually is doing anything. I will just have to be patient, I guess. I'll turn you guys off and I'll get back when the formatting is complete. Of course, the moment there's no progress bar, but the moment I stopped recording, this screen appeared. So, okay, I do want to install the bootloader, because otherwise it will just not boot, I guess. So yes. And this is a very important question. If you do not use the install system directory as a read or write, it will only give you a couple of gigabytes of space, I believe 4 gigabytes of user space. And if you want to use the entire drive, you would have to create a different partition yourself, have to mount it and stuff. But if you say if you use yes on this question, this is a very important question to answer if you install Android on a PC. If you say yes, it will use the entire drive as a continuous storage space. So it does root the system, so it's less safe. But it also makes your entire terabyte of hard drive space available for applications, for files and stuff. So probably not, if you're a novel user, probably not the way you would want to install Android, because it's relatively unsafe. Yeah, I've hooked this up over the Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet. Now Android is actually, quite a few games will actually only download certain files if you use a Wi-Fi. So you could stick in a Wi-Fi adapter, which I might actually have. I'm not sure. It could be that that little dongle in the front is not a Bluetooth adapter, but it's a Wi-Fi adapter. Sometimes if you have games, they just refuse to download from the default data connection that's on, because they don't want you to rack up a ton of costs when you download over cellular network. But of course, most Android devices, they just have Wi-Fi or cellular data. And quite a few of the Android boxes, you hook up on your TV, they either have Wi-Fi or sometimes they have Ethernet, but they only do as a DHCP Ethernet, so you can't manually configure your internet stuff. Run Android, reboot. I think I have to reboot. I'll eject my if I can. That's probably protected. Okay. And then I'll just eject, because I don't want it to boot from the DVD. It recognized the kernel. This is cool that it continues to record. That is just actually quite surprising, because it refused to continue to record, and it's still recording. Yes, it refused to record when I was using all these different emulators on Laka and on Linux. So probably this is just defaulting to a default resolution with a default refresh rate that, for some reason, the capture device doesn't want to crap out on me. Of course, you guys could lose me anytime. I mean, it's going to crap out on me, you know, anytime soon. I'm just hoping that the Android will actually put the audio through HDMI. Because if it does, I mean, it did so on Linux, and it should do so on Android. Basically the same thing, but you never know. Yeah. Something happened on the screen. I see a battery mark, and I see something that I probably should not record, because it involves me putting in my personal information. So I'll just see what I can skip. Welcome, English United States. Why not? Now, English United States. The set wizard stopped, and I guess it was loading from the hard drive, and it just didn't expect it to just load slower. Yeah, I just need to put in my information. I'll get back to you a bit later. Okay, so what it did, it asked me to put in my information on my Wi-Fi. There's a Wi-Fi signal, but it's with an exclamation mark. But I've also hooked it up over the Ethernet. So now what it wants to do, and if you already have an Android account or a Google account, it's actually great. But now it wants you to put in your default Android information, which I am actually going to, and I'm going to stop the recording again. And once it all, there's a two-step verification process and stuff. So once that has been put in, I'll get back to you. Yeah, so I've put in all my personal information. I've entered the verification code, so it should continue to install. Of course, now you see my password, so I really need to take that out as well. Just a second. So basically it's just like setting up a tablet, and I really have to edit out all the email addresses and stuff, but yeah, but so far so good. It just seems to be quite snappy. It's Amsterdam, 1042, that's all correct. Did I have all sorts of different accounts? Just, you know, this is just going to be my gaming restore apps from these devices. GameMid BAA43. Don't restore, I just want to do it fresh, because otherwise review additional apps. So this is something different. I have never installed Android 6. The only Android I've been using actually is Android 5. And I may actually have to just put myself over here so it just doesn't interfere with the dialog boxes and stuff. It says it's loading something, but I'll press OK. Completing setup. Now there's a bit of an overscan thing going on. So, is an open source project maintained by Logitech. Would like to collect some anonymous data. Sure. And that's Android for you. Let's go to settings. Now, using a mechanical hard drive, you can actually see that it's a bit laggy when you access an application at some point. Let's check out memory. So it does detect all the memory, free 6.8. So it also Android takes a bit away from the 8 gigabytes for system resources and stuff. About tablet, I'm very curious. So it says 6.1, it says Lenovo, it says model number, and it does the OpenGL stuff, ES, MISA. Interesting. Now, I should go to the Play Store and install some apps in order to check out how it runs. So I'll do that, but I'll not bore you with it, and I'll be back a bit later on. But being able to grab this with the AverMedia Grabby is actually quite nice. A little time has passed. It didn't install great, but it turned out that using one of these old-fashioned mechanical hard drives and Android, you know, it does work, but it's sometimes apps or bits of the OS hang because the way that the data is stored on the mechanical drive and the way it's retrieved, sometimes operations time out, and Android asked so, well, the program is not responding, would you wait or would you press OK? So I ended up testing it out on an SSD, and that actually works a lot better. So eventually, in the end, Android ended up being up on the Dell, whereas the Dell, which had Laka, it moved to the Lenovo, which actually works quite well because the Lenovo has the NVIDIA graphics card, and that actually has a bit of an edge when it comes to emulation and OpenGL compatibility if you compare it with the built-in Intel HD graphics. And on the Dell, using the DisplayPort adapter and an HDMI adapter, actually all the sound outputs through the HDMI cable, which is great. And on the Lenovo, I can actually output the sound over the HDMI cable as well, because you can actually set the sound to come from over the HDMI cable within Laka, which is great. So yeah, a bit of a reversal thing, but both systems actually run great. So Laka is on the Lenovo, Android 6.0.0601 I mean, is on the Dell, and I've downloaded some stuff, and we're gonna check it out in the last video because this has gone on long enough. So it's going to be in the 4th installment, the testing out of the Android as a gaming system on PC.